All right, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us again in the Vegas Squares podcast. We are here in the middle of the week. It is almost the end of October. We've got everything kind of going on right now. We've got baseball in the World Series. We've got basketball just starting up. We've got hockey just kind of getting into that early groove. And we've got, obviously, football, which is king. We got a little bit of everything. I'm sure Token Tony can inform us on some of the obscure sports going on. I got Token on the phone. What's up, brother?
Not much. Yeah, I mean, some bowling fall swing going on as well, but nothing really major going in that department. Tennis, just a whole bunch of end-of-the-year tournaments, nothing too relevant, just players preparing for the Australian Open in that aspect.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's all the way.
Besides that,
it's all the way down to. I mean, I was down on the Strip the other day, and they had part of the road blocked off near Circus because they were filming drone racing inside of Adventure Dome. So everything is literally going on at this time of the year.
Jeez, I'm not that weird. I'm not into drone racing, so.
You know, I work nights, and it comes on TV at night on this one channel that for whatever reason we get, and I'm not quite addicted to it, but I can't stop watching it. Is that the same thing?
Well, there's not much else on at that time besides infomercials, so.
That's true.
At least it's somewhat entertaining.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I guess. I mean, it's pretty cool, but not something I guess I wish I got into as a kid because it could have made me some money. But at this point in time, I don't think I'm going to be taking up a career in the drone racing league. So that's probably out of my league right there. No pun intended. But anyways, we appreciate you listening. We're on 12-Ounce Sports Radio here. It is, what day is it now? Who the frick knows? It's a day. It's a day that ends in Y. We want to thank the folks at 12-Ounce Sports Radio for putting us on multiple times a week. We are on every Monday at, I can do this, Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. We are on Saturdays with our Picks and Chatter podcast at 11 a.m. Eastern, getting you ready for the NCAA games. And we are on 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, getting you ready for the NFL slate with our Picks and Chatter podcast, NFL edition. So, Token, let's thank the other sponsors. Who else we got? We got ChaiPoker.com and we got VGK Pop Sockets.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, now that we got all the bills paid, let's start talking. Let's jump into the NFL. There's some... You know, this is a year where, you know, the trade deadlines moved back from week 6 to week 8. So I feel like the teams in these years have been able to kind of see what their team is all about, know if they're going to be competing for the rest of the year or mailing it in. You got teams like the Giants who were 1-6. They traded Snacks Harrison over to your boys in Detroit. You got the Raiders.
Yeah.
You got the Raiders who are mailing it in, who shipped Amari Cooper over to the Cowboys. You're probably going to have some other movement here in a little bit. I mean, Eli Apple went to the Saints. I'm sure that all Giants fans, when they saw the headline, Eli to the Saints, they got a little excited and they realized, well, wrong Eli.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you think? I mean, you have these trades. You have GMs now in the league where I figure by week 7 or 8, you can really feel if your team is going to be in it or out.
Yeah, and some of those teams were right on the bubble or trying to get some valuable resources to make that either push or see what could happen with them. So,
yeah, I mean, I got to imagine the fire sale's on for the Giants. Eli Apple gone, Damon Harrison gone within the course of a day. I mean, I got to imagine the Giants are completely rebooting. They've got to be mailing it in an attempt to get, you know, a first-round pick within the 2 to 5 region, preferably 2 or 3 like they got last year. But
yeah,
it doesn't bode well seeing these teams mail it in so early for my 14 losses or more bet. I'm pretty sure I'm punting on that one. But, you know, Detroit so far with acquiring – let's talk about Snacks Harrison because I know that you're excited as a Lions fan. I mean, this is huge.
Yes, I am.
This is huge. I mean, this guy's 30 years old, doesn't have like a too big of a cap hit, only $8.6 million. He's probably actually one of the better run stuffers in the league up there with the likes of Aaron Donald.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of our weaknesses on our defensive line is that we have a really good pass defensive line, but we don't have that run stopper, that the guy that can make that push and just nail the runner or make him go a different way and have our other guys tackle him. So,
yeah, I mean, most definitely. I mean, this guy's been in the league for, I believe, like 6 or 7 years. Has been an underrated star. Signed a big deal with the Giants, and like I said, even though he's at $8.6 million, he can be cut in the off season. I mean, you're virtually for a 5th-round pick to get a guy like this. I mean, $8.6 million is, nothing.
I think it's a steal.
Yeah, nothing on the cap at that point. I mean, for your here, let's inform the guests. Let's inform the listeners that don't know. You do have a future bet on your Detroit Lions.
Yes, I do. I actually have them to win the division, and currently they sit 1 game behind Minnesota. That sits at 4-2-1, and we are at 3-3 currently.
And I believe you still have both games against Minnesota to play, correct?
Yes, both games against Minnesota and Chicago. We've only played the Packers so far this year, and
you're 1-0 in the division.
Yep, beat them.
So, I mean, that's a pretty good value right there, 12-1. I know you put 100 on it, so you're getting, obviously, $1,200 return if that were to happen. And being 1 game out after 6 games played, and I believe they've had a bye week as well. So to be 1 game out in this spot, especially with a Minnesota team that, Latavius Murray has been gashing people the last 3 weeks with Dalvin Cook being out. Picking up Harrison's got to be a big key for that offense. I mean, you figure in the league, in this division, you've got Tarek Cohen, Jordan Howard, Latavius Murray, potentially Dalvin Cook, and then you have the 3-headed monster of average backs in Green Bay. I mean, that's really, getting Harrison is really big for the situation.
Absolutely, yeah, and that will come really key when it comes down to the divisional games for sure.
Yeah, so, all right, well, let's look at the other ones. We already talked about, I mean, this one happened a week ago, but Carlos Hyde was shipped to Jacksonville for a 5th-round pick. I mean, the Browns, the backfield was a little cluttered. Nick Chubb showed last week that, Carlos Hyde may not be missed. And Duke Johnson, who's a sneaky good pass catcher, was actually getting what I like to call snap cracked. And because what that means is, as the guy who was second last year to Isaiah Crowell, he now became 3rd in line. And when this guy's on the field, Duke Johnson, him combined with Chubb create a thunder and lightning that really can create definitely a safety net for new quarterback Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, they'll be able to open up at the pass and move the chains more often, frequently, instead of concerning about 3 running backs. They'll have 2 go-to ones.
Yeah, most definitely. Only thing that would really be bad is injury, but at some point you gotta take away, or you gotta take a chance on that. So,
yeah.
I mean, for the Jaguars, you got Leonard Fournette, who knows when he's gonna play. Every week I have him. I mean, I drafted him 1 or 2 in my fantasy league, not number 1 or number 2, but my 1st or 2nd pick. And every week I get the notifications from Yahoo Sports. Leonard Fournette's status has been changed from questionable to out, to questionable to doubtful to out, to doubtful to out, to doubtful. So that's getting a little redundant.
Yeah.
You have TJ Yeldon, who's not the answer. Carlos Hyde, maybe? I mean, is that something? I mean, what the problem is now is Blake Bortles is running out of blankets, like safety blankets. I mean, the defense isn't playing well. Leonard Fournette's hurt. TJ Yeldon's not Leonard Fournette. And not saying Carlos Hyde is, but I think Carlos Hyde is closer to Leonard Fournette than TJ Yeldon.
Yes, absolutely. And the Jags need something to happen to keep them in the divisional race as well as the playoff race. Otherwise, it's just going to be a shitty year compared to expectations coming off of last season.
Well, yeah, you have expectations. They made the AFC Championship. So, at worst, Jacksonville fans expect, I would believe, at least that performance again. I mean, look, I'm not, like we talked about in the last, I can't remember which podcast, I believe it was the last podcast, so I said Blake Bortles is not a starting quarterback anymore. But the reason I really feel like that, to preface what I said, to make it not sound like such a hot take, is because Blake Bortles is a competent quarterback a la Case Keenum, but he needs a defense. He needs a running game. I mean, all great quarterbacks have had one or the other or both to be successful. I mean, look at it. You got Brady. Brady had a great defense in the first couple of Super Bowls. The ones they went to, they lost. He had a great receiving core. He's got decent running backs this year, an average defense. Obviously Blake Bortles and Tom Brady are on two separate continents. But what I'm saying is that when you have a guy who's not Tom Brady, he's Blake Bortles, this is when football becomes the ultimate team game. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, guys like that, Drew Brees, they mask a lot of inefficiencies on your team if you have them. Blake Bortles will not mask the inefficiency of Jacksonville's defense going from number 1 in the league all the way to I believe they're in the teens at this point. And Leonard Fournette obviously masked a lot of the offensive woes last year by being able to run over everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as having a few bounces go early for sure.
Yeah,
that definitely helped them go deeper into the playoffs, as well as having that competence.
I mean, for a cheap 5th-round pick, if Leonard Fournette comes back, I mean, can you imagine? He comes back healthy after sitting out for 6 weeks. After that, I think they have a bye in week 9 or 10. Then you have Carlos Hyde and Leonard Fournette, if they're both healthy, as two backs in the backfield that are just big bowling balls. I mean, if Blake Bortles is still the starting quarterback by that point, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, let's call it, I think week 9 is their bye, so let's say at week 10, they're let's see, 3-4 now. Let's say they got one more game. Let's say if they're 4-4, Bortles plays good, beats Philadelphia in London, Fournette comes back. I mean, they can still do damage in the AFC South. We've talked about the AFC South. They're all equally mediocre is not the right word, but they're all equally average in that division.
Yeah, I would say that's the key word. Yeah.
So, let's talk about Eli Apple to the Saints. Not really a huge, I don't know. I think this really actually does worse for the Saints because it takes away a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick in 2019 and 2020, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think the New Orleans Saints probably should have looked closer at making a run at Patrick Peterson, unless they still have intentions to do that as well. I think showing this may show me that they're not actually trying to maybe go after Patrick Peterson, who, granted, his news breaking kind of just came out right around the time Giants traded Eli Apple to the Saints. But I don't know. I would have liked to seen, and maybe, like I said, it still could be happen. I'd like to see the Saints make a run at Patrick Peterson, pair that guy up with Marshawn Lattimore, and really kind of strengthen the defense, which was so good last year and is almost equally as not good this year.
Yeah, that was kind of a shocker. Everybody was on a high for the Saints defense this year, and it hasn't proven it. And maybe picking up Eli Apple will add to building that success that they need to have to make the deep playoff run that they should have.
So, yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you sit here, for the Saints, you get a guy who I believe has been in the league for a couple of years. You can pair him with Marshawn Lattimore. That way he doesn't have to, because maybe depending on whether Janoris Jenkins, you consider him a top-flight cornerback. But, if Eli Apple and Janoris Jenkins in New York, Eli may have had to cover the number one more than he probably is talented enough to do. But here, I mean, you have Marshawn Lattimore, who's your clear number one. At worst case, he's an insurance cornerback for nothing, virtually. At best case, he's equal or better than Marshawn Lattimore. Let's not get crazy, but I'd say at best case, he's equal to Marshawn Lattimore in terms of being able to cover, wide receivers. And at this pace, he's probably not going to have to cover number ones. And look at the NFC South. You've got Devin Funchess, you got Julio Jones, you got Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, you got Mike Evans, you got Deshaun Jackson. There's a lot of big good receivers in the NFC South.
Yeah, there's a lot of talented wide receivers for sure. And Saints definitely need a number 2 that would be equivalent almost to Lattimore to take some of the pressure off of the other side of the defense, like the line and the safeties.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, actually the Saints' pass rush has been probably the best part of their defense. So if they can continue that, they can actually make Eli Apple look like a better deal because the Giants' pass rush was not getting there. So,
yeah.
All right, let's talk about the big one because that's the one that everybody's been talking about all day and yesterday. And Amari Cooper, Jerry Jones pulls off another one. Big name wide receiver, and he got him. Amari Cooper to the Cowboys in what feels like a year-long Raiders fire sale. I mean, obviously they got rid of Khalil Mack for 2 first-round picks, and then they got another first-round pick here for Amari Cooper, who, yes, he was a first-round talent. Maybe he has or hasn't performed at that level. That's really for you to say. I mean, he's been great at times. He's been awful at times. I mean, he's got the rest of this year, and he's got a 5th-year option at $13 million next year. I'm assuming the Raiders weren't going to pick that up next year. So to get a first-round pick for the Raiders at this point, it's got to feel like a big win for Gruden because, I mean, this is another team like the Giants were talking about that are making no attempts to, especially with Marshawn Lynch going to the IR, making no attempts to even pretend to be competitive at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Cowboys took a big risk in this one, especially giving up a first-round pick. I mean, even though there seems to not be super big talent this year in the NFL draft coming up, but I don't think Cooper was worth the first-round pick for sure. Maybe a second, possibly, but I mean, when you're desperate for a wide receiver and one's on the market, you do crazy stuff, so.
Well, I mean, the question I ask you here is, all right, so you don't agree with the trade or what they gave up for the trade, and I can see where your stance is on that. But just take a walk with me here, and I'll try to iron out some situation for the Cowboys that makes it feel like a win. All right, so as we stand today, the Cowboys are going into a bye week. If the season ended today, that first-round pick would be number 11 overall. That does sound bad, but the season's not even half. The season's half over at this point. Bringing in Cooper, if healthy, brings in Cooper, Allen Hurns, Michael Gallup, and Cole Beasley. I understand that the other 3 haven't been gangbusters, but I got to feel like with a guy like Amari Cooper is either going to be forced the ball in this offense or is going to open up so much more for these other 3 guys that I believe that pick can be a lot higher than 11th. And I believe with the NFC East being so wide open, I mean, Washington is leading at this point. No disrespect to them. They've played well. But I believe that pick's going to be probably around at the end of this year. I believe Dallas could be 8-8, maybe 9-7, 10-6 if they get in. Let's just say they go 8-8 right now, because right now they're 3-4. They've won 3 home games, lost 4 away games. So effectively,
could be like a 18th pick overall or something. Yeah,
it could be 18th, 17th, 18th pick. I gotta imagine the Cowboys would be going for a wide receiver in next year's draft. Correct? I mean, it just seems like
most likely, yeah.
So why not make the 18th pick Amari Cooper? You get a 1-year deal, or you can actually even extend him if you feel confident in what he does the rest of this season. And for the 18th pick in the draft, you got Amari Cooper, a proven wide receiver in your system who's made Dak Prescott better, open the lanes for Ezekiel Elliott. This is obviously the best case scenario. I mean, I understand it's a high price, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like this thing could pay off huge. If they make the playoffs, obviously that's even better. But I don't think $13 million, which I believe is like 5 or 6% of your salary cap, to a player next year, and even if you extend him at the same price for 3 more years, I feel like he's younger than Dez Bryant. He probably has the potential to be better than Dez Bryant. And I don't think it's too much of a risk at that percentage of your salary cap. And next year, if you've got money to spend, pair somebody with him. I mean, you're going to have your last season of Dak Prescott next year. You're obviously going to extend Ezekiel Elliott, and he's probably going to get maybe a little less than Todd Gurley dollars. You got to have a guy for Dak Prescott to throw the ball to. The wideout position is, I always say it's kind of the icing on the cake, but with a guy like Dak Prescott, you need talented receivers. I mean, look how much he has dropped from not having Dez and Jason Witten and then two healthy offensive linemen that could round out his offensive line. He's missing. He's the same guy we're talking about with Bortles. You need healthy, athletic, talented people at this position, and I think for one first-round pick that may end up being at minimum 15, but that first-round pick at maximum, if they make the playoffs, make a second, win the first game in the wild card or win the division, get to host a wild card game, that pick could be 25, which is where I believe they sat last year. I think they sat at 22 last year and skipped Calvin Ridley. So, I mean, let's take a look at the last couple drafts. Other than, Calvin Ridley is too early to pan out, and so is obviously like DJ Moore. But what are the names of the last? Let's take the last three drafts. How many wide receivers can you name the last three drafts that have gone in the first round? Not many.
Yeah.
So why not go with? Again, Cooper at this stage of his career is not a surefire Hall of Famer, but for the bottom barrel 15th pick all the way up to the top of the barrel 25th pick, I'd say he's worth it.
I get what you're saying, but I still don't agree with it. But I don't know. I think it does help the Cowboys at this point, and see what happens from there.
Well, if you're the Cowboys, say you kept this pick, right? Say you kept this pick, didn't trade for Amari Cooper, you're average. Even as you stand right now, you're an average team. Let's say you finish 7-9 and you draft 14th. Again, you're currently going wide receiver. What other position on the Dallas Cowboys is of greatest need? Their defense is pretty good. I could say they go in the secondary. And again, I don't have all this prospects, in front of me of who would go where and who would go, who. But I feel like.
On defense, they probably need like a middle linebacker or a quarterback.
Well, Sean Lee is one of the best middle linebackers in the game, so I would take middle linebacker out of that. But yeah, okay, so you take a corner. But I don't know. I think it's a risky move. Don't get me wrong, and I think Jerry Jones likes playmakers and Jerry Jones likes names, and Amari Cooper is a name. And right now, the only name in Dallas that actually is moving the needle is unfortunately Jason Garrett. So I think they need something here to give him a chance to. I think they need something here to give him a chance to potentially make the playoffs. Even if that pick ends up being a top 15 pick, I'm fine. I'm fine with this trade. And I think if you extend Cooper. I believe Cooper would be okay, given the fact that he probably hasn't performed up to $13 million a year. I bet if you extended Cooper for $8 to $9 million a year, I think you'd be getting a steal for that price at a wide receiver. 5 years, $45 million. You offered it to him at the end of the season. I believe he'd jump on it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe you have him break out in Dallas and lay up the field. So.
Or he can lay up, or he can blow up, and you give him his option. He over the course of, I think the worst case you're going to get out of him statistically. So they're 3-4 right now, heading into the bye. So you have 9 games left, plus 16 games next year. So that's 25 games. So let's say over 25 games, he averages. Worst case scenario, he averages 3 catches a game. And he gets 4 touchdowns in 25 games. That's your worst case scenario. I'm getting 75 catches. Let's say he averages 15 yards a catch. So what's that? That's almost 1,000 yards at that point. That's actually probably over 1,000 yards at that point. So I'm getting, in 25 games, I'm getting 75 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns for a first-round pick for 2 years, effectively, for a year and a half.
Yeah, that's worst-case scenario, yeah.
Because you know that he's going to be forced into this offense. I mean, make no mistake about that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you'd be surprised if he wasn't. I mean,
well, yeah, because you see what, like I said, I'm not disrespecting Alan Hearns, Michael Gallup, Cole Beasley, whatever the hell else they got in there. I don't even know who their tight ends are. But point being is I think Alan Hearns is pretty decent. He was decent in Jacksonville. Michael Gallup showed flashes last week against Washington that he could be a deep threat. Cole Beasley is that Julian Edelman type, and this guy could realistically run any route to open up this offense. That may benefit that person that may benefit the most is Ezekiel Elliott in this spot.
Yeah.
So, all right, you may not believe me, but that's I gave my spiel. I think the Raiders win this because I'm not saying the Cowboys lose, but what I'm saying is the Raiders win by getting a first-round pick for a guy that they were pretty much just kind of throw into the scrap heap. They said they prefer a first-round pick. They probably weren't expecting it, but I think once they threw that out there, somebody bid on it. They were like, we have to take it at this point because, they're basically. I think honestly, I know I said it on a couple podcasts ago. I think honestly, there will be no players from this team that take a snap in Vegas.
I could definitely agree with that statement. I mean,
I think the person who's got the most percentage chance is Derek Carr. And I think
even then,
percentage is less than 20.
I agree with that. I mean, that's one person that could be even traded this year.
Could be traded to the Giants.
Yeah, well, that could be a possibility. I mean, maybe trade Eli for Derek.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's not happening. Well, maybe.
No.
Yeah, maybe. I was just thinking they'd trade Derek Carr, let him learn the playbook over the next however many weeks are left, 10 weeks or whatever, and
develop to next year.
Yeah, be the starting quarterback next year. That way you don't have to spend that top 3 pick on a quarterback. You got a pretty decent quarterback who's ready to go, and you can use that on offensive line, which is absolutely abysmal, even with signing Solder and drafting that Hernandez guy. So, yeah, well, yeah. Anyways, let's talk about Patrick Peterson. We talked about him a little bit with that Eli Apple trade, but he's basically made it known to the Cardinals organization that he'd like to be moved, which I get it. They're not any contention anytime soon. They're probably, I don't know if they're going through a rebuild or not. I mean, their defense is halfway decent. They've got an up-and-coming receiver in Christian Kirk. They've got a workhorse back in David Johnson. Josh Rosen, I guess the rebuild is how long is it going to take Josh Rosen to become, a winner in this league? I mean, you're in a spot right now. You're obviously not competing against the Rams. The Seahawks are a fluttering team, and the 49ers are a question mark because Jimmy G is on the sideline right now. It doesn't shock me that Peterson wants to be moved. It just, if he's saying that he wants to be moved because he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild, I just don't know if there's a rebuild really going on. I think it's just kind of let's see what happens with Josh Rosen, and obviously Sam Bradford didn't really work out.
Yeah, he pretty much got hurt once he got traded.
Yeah, I mean, you got Patrick Peterson, who played his college ball at LSU, and the reports are that the Saints would be his destination of choice. And obviously, if you're the Saints, you have to be interested. The question is do they have enough to give up for this kind of player? This is a kind of player that may command a first-round pick over Amari Cooper.
I would see that for sure. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is maybe a second and like a 4th-round pick or something being given up. But I think destination requires a first-round pick for this. So depends what teams are willing to give up what. And Saints, if the Saints would trade for him, give up a first-round pick, might even be closer to the later part of the 20s if they do give him up. So,
yeah, a couple other teams interested. The Eagles have expressed interest, and obviously everyone always links any decent player to the New England Patriots. I would love to see Peterson play for the New England Patriots because you put him on one side and Stephon Gilmore on the other side, who actually I dog him a lot, but I was reading an article somewhere that actually he's actually one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the league when it comes to coverage. And in that same article, Malcolm Butler, who we all know for being a hero in one Super Bowl and being a GOAT in the other, is actually the worst cornerback in terms of their analytical coverage. This was after Week 6 in the NFL. I wish I could find that article, but there's a couple of guys in Arizona move, but obviously Peterson is the name, the star attraction. I can't imagine that New England would part with a first-round pick, but I could see them parting with a couple years draft picks, couple seconds, couple thirds. Some of the times you really don't want to overvalue a guy because, like I said, that's what made the Amari Cooper trade so shocking is because, oh my God, a first-round pick when, we saw other guys go for, Khalil Mack, 2 first-round picks. Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a player like that. Is Patrick Peterson that kind of player that commands a first-round pick? I would say maybe 1 if you know that your first-round pick is going to be high like New England's will be. I don't think a team like the 49ers or, a team that's going to have a first-round pick this year that's going to be in the top 10, I don't think they're going to be somebody parting with a first-round pick for Patrick Peterson because that doesn't put them any better than they were yesterday. A trade to the Saints, a trade to the Saints, a trade to Kansas City, a trade to the Eagles, a trade to the Cowboys, a trade to the Patriots. That makes those teams better, and that sounds like what Patrick Peterson wants to be a part of, the team that's contending right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I was about to say the Rams, but the Rams have too much depth in this position, so it makes them very unlikely in this spot.
Yeah, they got Talib, they got Marcus Peters, but they also don't have a lot of contract space really to bring on. I believe he makes like $11 million or something like that next year. So
sounds about right, yeah.
I don't know if he can. The question mark would be is if they could find it in their cap space like LA, if they could find it in their cap space to take on this contract with a trade. Let's see, what's the because Marcus Peters isn't coming back. Aqib Talib may or may not be coming back. So you play with 3 great corners for a year, and then in next year, Peterson's your number 1 guy. I mean, he's going to be your number 1 guy already, but I mean, you play for now, and then whether now works or not, you have Peterson. It's going to be hard to put that in the books. I mean, he's going to be making $11 million next year, and I believe this year he makes like 9.9. If they can find $9.9 million, I say you take a shot, or maybe you trade one of Talib or Peters because, I mean, if Arizona's looking to shed salary, I believe Marcus Peters is on the final year of his deal. Marcus Peters is the better cornerback than Talib, though.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I would agree with that statement.
So, anyways, speaking of not playing football anymore, it sounds like Jamal Charles is probably going to hang up his cleats. He played a whole 2 games. Let me try to find his stats here. I think he grabbed, 4 carries for like 8 yards. And that was about it. Excuse me, he had 7 yards on the ground on, let's see. I can find this here. I will get it. Hold on. I know this is riveting radio. He had 6 carries for 7 yards with a long of 5.
Pretty strong.
Yeah. Oh, he also had 2 catches for 7 yards. So, good for him. But I don't think that the Jacksonville Jaguars expected 14 yards out of him. And I'm guessing with Carlos Hyde now being a newest member of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Jamal Charles became expendable at this point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, I think it was just kind of like a stunt move by Jacksonville to try and acquire him, and it didn't seem realistic once it went through.
So let's take a look at his career. If it does, in fact, hang up the cleats, he had 7,560 yards rushing with 44 touchdowns. He had 2,592 yards receiving and 20 reception touchdowns. I just don't think his career was long enough. He had 5 1,000-yard seasons, including a 1,500-yard season. I wouldn't say I'm going out on a limb, but I'm going to say he's not a Hall of Famer at this point.
I would agree with that statement. I mean, maybe just based on his name and his capability to get the ball in the end zone in certain key spots, that maybe slightly pushes him closer to being it, but I say he's still on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, he only played 16 games twice in his career, 2010 and 2012. Those years, he rushed for 1,400 yards and 1,500 yards with 5 touchdowns each. So when he was actually healthy in Kansas City, he put up some good numbers. I mean, 3 straight years, 1,500, 1,287, and 1,033. In those seasons, he also had 26 touchdowns over 3 seasons just on the ground. Also added another 13 touchdowns through the air during those 3 big seasons. Yeah, didn't win a title, he didn't win any Super Bowls. I just think his career is kind of mirrored after Terrell Davis. It doesn't have the rings with it and the dominance. He just seemed to be such a flashy runner. I don't feel like 5 years is enough when you don't have any rings or any real, when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The 2011 when he tore his ACL, you have 15, 16, 17, and 18 when he combined for, 500, 600, 700. He combined in 4 years, he combined for almost 700 yards. I mean, I just can't give it to him. Yeah, I just can't give it to him. So, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, maybe he changes his mind the next week or so, but I don't see it happening. I think his mind's pretty certain on this.
Well, I'm sure if somebody picks up the phone, I just can't imagine anybody's going to be picking up the phone, kicking the tires on this guy, unless I can see somebody like Oakland being like, "Hey, we want to really ruin your knees for the rest of your life."
Could be a possibility, but I don't see that.
Yeah, we'll see. So it'll be interesting to see. We're going to have Chris the Commish Moon on later, a little bit later, to talk playoff baseball. So stay tuned for that. But here, right, we got a couple of minutes before he comes on. Let's stay with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got that game over in London this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Who needs this game more? Both teams, I believe, are 3-4 at this point.
In my opinion, I believe the Jags need this game more. I think the Eagles can come out of a deeper hole than what they can.
You think so? I mean, the NFC East is obviously not the greatest division. Everybody's kind of a little bit of... again, the word of the day is not... don't want it to be mediocre, but I feel like if they go 3-5 at this point, Dallas moves ahead of them just sheerly by being on a bye. You can throw the Giants out of the window at this point, obviously. They still have to play 2 in Washington, 2 in Dallas, so they effectively have to come out of a... let's say Washington wins this week. They effectively go to 5-2. They would have to come out of a 3-game hole on their bye week with 8 games to play in the NFL. The only good thing is they have to go straight through the Redskins.
Yeah, and that's why I think they could come out of this hole a little easier than Jacksonville.
But the Redskins, the next 3 games they get to play are the Giants, Atlanta at home, and Tampa Bay. So, effectively, if they go...
I see them going 2-1 in that stretch, yeah.
At worst, I would see 2-1 at that point. And then you have the Eagles, who would then have to play, if they lose to the Jaguars and go 3-5, they would then have to play Dallas. Oops, I lost it there. Stupid refreshing. I hate when it refreshes.
I think they could win in Dallas, though.
Sure, it's in Philly. Then they go at New Orleans. Well, they got a favorable schedule before they face off against the Skins. So they're 3-5 if they lose to Jacksonville. They go Dallas at Philly. They win that. They go to 4-5. They go to New Orleans, which is probably a loss. So then they're 4-6. They beat the Giants, so then they're 5-6. They're 5-6 against a team who, at worst, could be 6-3. And then they go Dallas again, Rams, Texans, and Washington. So I'm just going to quick hit and say, I think, and I know we'll talk about this on the NFL Pick Show. I think quick hit. I think Jacksonville wins, puts them at 3-5. They beat Dallas 4-5. They lose to New Orleans 4-6. They beat the Giants 5-6. I'll give them the win in Philadelphia against the Redskins at 6-6. I'll say they beat the Dallas in Dallas at 7-6. Lose to LA, that's 7-7. Lose to Houston, that's 7-8. So they're playing the Week 17, trying to go 8-8 against Washington. I don't know. I don't see it for them. And again, I could be completely wrong. I'm not clairvoyant. I don't know what's going to happen. That's my initial thought process on this. And, I mean, who knows? They may be clicking enough to beat LA or beat New Orleans or beat Houston, because who knows what Houston's going to be like in Week 16 if they're playing like they are now, playing comfortable football. And who knows? They may have Le'Veon Bell at that point.
Yeah, you never know. I mean,
probably a stretch.
Could be a possibility.
Yeah, probably a stretch. All right, and that's enough NFL talk, I would say. We exhausted the NFL this week, but so now we're gonna bring back in Chris the Commish Moon, as we've done for the last few weeks, as MLB postseason is now in the World Series. At this point, we've played 2 games. The Red Sox have won both of those games pretty comfortably. And Chris, what's up, brother? I know as a Red Sox fan and as a bettor with a futures Red Sox ticket, you got to be feeling pretty good at this moment.
I'm feeling very good about my beloved Sox. How can you complain? Winning both games at home, hold and serve. Gotta love it.
That is true. And we've got an 8-4 victory in Game 1. The dagger in the coffin was that Eduardo Nunez 3-run homer. And let's talk about a little bit about what everybody's been talking about the last day or so leading up to Game 2, and that was the Dave Roberts' decision to put in Alex Wood instead of leaving in Baez at that point, when Baez had been pretty hot, striking out two batters in a row and making them look silly doing it. And then bringing in Alex Wood to face the lefty Devers with the pinch hitter Nunez, and then the pinch hitter Nunez coming up and then hitting a 3-run bomb. I don't want to look results-oriented, but it seemed like the wrong move even before Nunez was named the pinch hitter.
Well, I don't think it was really the wrong move. Nunez has really struggled, and you kind of know that the Sox are going to make the move once Wood comes in, and so Nunez he hit an amazing. It was a great pitch too. He hit it.
Yeah, he
hits bat balls and he hits them a long way. But I don't really question Dave Roberts there.
It just seems like it was more of an analytical move than a move. Sometimes I feel like, managers, you got to go with your gut. And, even though it would have been a righty-lefty matchup with Devers, I mean, Devers likes to swing at balls that Baez is pretty good at throwing out of the strike zone. It felt like the Devers-Baez matchup would have been more favorable for L.A. I understand, like I said, you can look at it, hey, look, Alex Wood came in. Like you said, it was a good pitch. Nunez got a hold of it. But it just seems like even not looking results-oriented, even before that, I felt like the better matchup, even righty-lefty combination, was definitely Baez versus Devers, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, that's why
I'm sitting here critiquing it and not coaching the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's why they make the big bucks. They have to make that split-second decision, and I can't really blame Dave Roberts at all there. I can't.
All right, well, let's look at your personal. You have a futures ticket on the Red Sox. If you care to share with the listeners, at what's your price on that one?
Well, I got them at plus 700 back the first week of April. I saw the Sox after the first week, and they were looking pretty impressive. And I said, you know what? It's going to come down to the Red Sox and the Yankees, I think, out of that American League East. And the Sox just were amazing all year. So pretty happy with my plus 700 on that ticket. And here we are, 2-0 going to L.A.
Yeah, most definitely. Have you looked at any hedging opportunities just yet?
Well, I did not hedge against the Red Sox, but what I did was, of course, I had the Brewers on the other side, and when the Brewers and Dodgers faced off, I hedged out of the Brewers, and I took a Dodgers minus 140 to win that series, and they did, and I took the Dodgers at plus 325 to win the World Series, just in case they made it all the way here. So I guess in a roundabout way, I did sort of hedge a little bit. I'm going to walk away either side with a bit of a profit, but much more with the Red Sox.
Right on. Yeah, most definitely. In the last two games, I've been able to be on the right side at this point, betting Red Sox and Red Sox minus 1.5 runs. But the tide turns. I mean, let's look at this. I mean, yes, the Red Sox have controlled the series, but make no mistake about it, they've done what they were supposed to do, win the home games. Now the series switches over to the left coast, and the style of play switches over. And obviously, just initial thought, that's got to favor the Dodgers at home for 3. I mean, this series is by no means, over by this chance. But, how do you start looking at the 3 matchups and what the Red Sox now have to do to adapt to National League Baseball?
Well, I think the Red Sox need to just take 1 out of the 3, and then, go from there. I know that Mookie Betts is most likely going to be playing second base once they come out here, out to L.A., which then puts J.D. Martinez out in right field, and because you can't take his bat out of the lineup. So, 1 out of 3, I think the Sox are going to finish it out here, and they will probably take 2 out of 3 in L.A. Clayton Kershaw once again looks, like he always does in the postseason. He regressed once again. The Sox, they're very patient, and they're going to wait it out and make great at bats and force him to really throw strikes. And it's a professional lineup, 1-9 in Boston.
Yeah, and you talked about Kershaw, and obviously Game 1 was touted Kershaw versus Sale, and both pitchers basically went about 4 innings plus, gave up a few runs, responsible for a few runners that they let obviously score. It didn't seem like, it seemed like that was the billing, but it didn't live up to the hype from the pitching standpoint. Are you concerned? Obviously, you talked about Kershaw, but are you concerned about Sale going forward as the ace of the Red Sox? Because he's probably gonna throw, I would imagine, Game 4 or 5 in L.A. at this point. And based on your prediction, with a chance to close it out, probably in Game 5, are you concerned about maybe the Red Sox not having that guy right now that can come in and close this series out with? I liken him to a guy like, I liken in this situation to pitchers like Randy Johnson coming in, Kurt Schilling coming in I believe that was 2004. These guys coming in, nailing the door shut. Are you concerned the Red Sox may or may not have that guy right now with Sale pitching kind of the way he did in Game 1?
I'm not very concerned with Sale. I don't think he comes back and pitches in Game 4. I think, given the 2-0 lead, that they will let him come back in Game 5 if necessary. I think what they're saying is Porcello goes in Game 3 and possibly Nathan Eovaldi in Game 4, and then it just becomes, mix and match with the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, the guy's pitched both games, so far, and I think he's only done about an inning in each. How does that kind of, factor in with, you have a guy who's pitched, out of the bullpen both games of the World Series, and then now has, let's see, today is now, Thursday at this point, Friday, Saturday. If he pitches Game 4, he's got basically 2 days to get ready for a start, not to mention he's coming off of Tommy John surgery.
Well, postseason is much different from the regular season.
Sure, I can agree with that.
You're sacrificing, and the fact is he only threw, I believe, 13 pitches tonight, but 1 inning. Most of these guys, they have a bullpen day in between starts anyway, so this could have
acted as a bullpen start.
Basically been a bullpen session. 13 pitches, 15 pitches, whatever it was, not really significant. And if you can get even 4 innings out of Eovaldi in Game 4, I mean, you got to be happy with that. Joe Kelly looks amazing, and the rest of the bullpen, it's mix and match time, and sabermetrics have really taken over. You no longer need to have your starter go 7 or 8 innings.
Yeah, and especially you talked about the bullpen, for all the talk in the ALCS that was Craig Kimbrell and the holding your breath and your heartbeat racing. 2 games, 2 innings. I believe he struck out 4 so far out of the 6 batters, he's retired. He's putting to bed. Any real thoughts for Red Sox fans? Any real fears right now?
Yeah. No problem with Kimbrell. He threw 9 pitches.
Yeah, that's got to feel good for Red Sox fans at this point. So,
oh yeah.
All right, put your Dodger blue cap on, and we got World Series Game 3. I imagine Buehler's going to be going in Game 3 for the Dodgers. If the Dodgers are to get the win here in Game 3, I mean, the roster deeper than I do at this point, the pitching staff. I mean, you go to Kershaw in Game 4 if you feel like Boston's going to go to Sale in Game 5 to try to get that advantage. Because, yes, I understand Kershaw's stats in the postseason, but, I mean, he's still 1A or 1B as far as options to put out there in Game 4.
You definitely have to throw Kershaw in Game 4 if you're the Dodgers. He is your number one. He'll be at home, much more comfortable. Still got to face the best offense in all of baseball, but, he's your best pitcher. And you got to go with him to get back in the series.
Yeah, most definitely. It's I think regardless of win or loss, if they're down 2-1 or they're down 3-0, I think you've got to go to Kershaw for that stopgap and at least give yourself a shot to not get swept in this series. But Buehler's been no slouch. I mean, Game 3, like as you see it, is there going to be for Boston any kind of trouble with this? Like you said, Mookie Betts playing second. I mean, when's the last time he played second? It had to be in the minor leagues. He came up as a middle infielder. I mean, playing, finally going back to a position you haven't played for in a few, haven't played in a few years. In the World Series, I wouldn't say it's quite like riding a bike. If they had gotten him some time during the season, I would, feel a little more comfortable. But, I mean, is there any kind of liability there, with obviously the bat will be fine because his bat's better than Kinsler. And like you said, in Nunez, even despite the 3-run homer.
Right.
But the defensive, do you feel any sort of defensive liability at this point with Mookie?
I don't see it. I mean, Mookie is an athlete. He came up as a second baseman. He fields ground balls every week in the infield just because it helps him with his hands. Mm-hmm. I don't see a real issue. Maybe with turning double play because they haven't done it. But as far as handling second base, I don't really see that much of a problem because he's got the speed, the range. He's got the great arm anyway. And I'm sorry, but yeah, it is kind of like riding a bike. He's done it growing up as a kid. You know, I really think it's going to be great to see him play second base, and we're just going to see a complete Red Sox team, and possibly next year he plays second base.
We never know.
Pedroia, he's been hurt, and who knows if he's done or not. But Mookie, he loves second base. I think he would love to have the opportunity to play there for a full season.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, fair enough. That's an interesting take. I didn't think about that going forward, especially Pedroia being out. Kinsler's obviously not the long-term option. And
Brock Holt's really, he's a utility guy. So
yeah. And if you have a chance to get, pick up another corner outfielder or even be able to bring up a prospect in the outfield and keep JD DH, and that's going to be big for him. So anyway,
right. Outfield is much easier to plug a hole than second base.
Sure, I would agree with that. So. All right, Chris. Well, we've got a couple more games left in this series, at least two. It's exciting. It's going to switch to our coast here at this point, so I'm definitely excited to do that. I might be going out to a game depending on if these prices come down a little bit. Looks like I don't really want. I don't know if I necessarily want to pay a mortgage payment to go sit in the nosebleed section. So, well, good luck with your now. I guess you're making money either way, so I won't really have to say good luck because you got it coming in on both sides, but. It's gonna be an awesome showcase. As a Boston fan, obviously you want to close it out as soon as possible, but there's not much like clinching a title in Fenway Park. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
I agree. Let's take care of this in LA. Yeah, we'll celebrate on the road. That's okay.
Right on. Well,
maybe they'll stop into Vegas and.
There you go.
Celebrate here with us.
Maybe we'll get to lift the trophy.
That would be awesome.
So, all right. Well, Chris the Commish Moon, he's got hedges on futures and hedges on both sides. His Red Sox are 2 games away from winning the World Series. And Chris, as always, the last couple of weeks, we appreciate you coming on. We'll probably have you on next week to kind of recap everything. And once again, thank you very much.
All right. Take care, Aaron.
All right. So that was Chris the Commish Moon giving us his talk on playoff MLB baseball. The World Series. We're 2 games in to the MLB World Series, and it's been quite a World Series. We'll be interested to see what goes on from there. Token Tony, any parting words on the NFL, baseball, anything else? Bowling? You like the bowling?
As right now. Dumpster fire of the team Red Wings right now. Go Knights. Coming back from a few good wins. Number one in my spot there is go Lions. Win that division.
There you go. Get that 12-1 money. We'll have to talk a little bit more betting angles next week as we look into all the different sports. All right. Well, that was Token Tony. I am Aaron. We want to thank our sponsors, 12-Ounce Sports Radio, VGK Pop Sockets, and ChaiPoker.com. We want to thank you guys for listening. We will catch you on the next episode.